Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we're focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and now let's get on with the show. When things go sideways, will you be prepared? Some people are concerned they might have to go for a long time without electricity or even food. That's why I want to introduce you to 4patriots.com. Get preparedness products you can use now, and that could save your life later. My favorite is 4Patriots' new solar generator, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It uses the endless free power of the sun to power lights, your TV, medical equipment, even run your fridge. Plus, it's expandable and comes with a free solar panel. Or pick up one of 4Patriots' best-selling survival food kits. Delicious tasting and designed to last for 25 years. They even have kits with real meat, and if the power's out, no worries. Just boil water over a fire, simmer, and serve. You'll enjoy a hot meal and stay safe in a crisis. More smart people than ever are finding 4Patriots. Over 2 million customers trust them, and you might have even seen them on TV. I had the folks at 4Patriots set up a special page for you at 4patriots.com/drive-on so that listeners of this podcast can see this week's discounts and deals before they go away. Go to 4patriots.com/drive-on, but hurry, these deals won't last long. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to 4patriots.com/drive-on. Hey everybody, welcome back to Drive On. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and today my guest is Kristof Morrow. Kristof served in the Navy, and he's here today to discuss how his shipmate's suicide has influenced his life. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. But first, I want to welcome you to the show, Kristof. I'm really glad to have you here.
Like I said earlier, it's very kind of you to have me. Thank you so much for accepting that. Shakespeare.
Yeah, absolutely. So you reached out probably a couple weeks ago, and you shared a little bit about your story with me, and I thought it was important to be able to share, what you have experienced and what you've gone through, and everything. So let's take it back a bit and let's talk about like what got you into the Navy in the first place. What motivated you to join the Navy?
Shakespeare. I always considered the military outside of like being a doctor or something, some degree oriented, something that requires a great deal of education. That the other thing that people can see that because I come from a poor family, joining the military. My grandfather was in the military. My father was not, and I always considered it a solemn thing. I considered the notion of like camaraderie to be one of the rare things we've invented that ennoble us.
Sure. Yeah, and I noticed just through talking with folks who've been in the military that camaraderie is one of the things that is like the biggest thing that they miss upon leaving the military, right? It's just such a bonding experience.
Yeah.
Even just for the short,
there's layers to that bonding. There's there's degrees of bonding. You start when boot camp, it's like you're all afraid, and then and then it's like as you go through your service, so it's different. It changes.
It does change, yeah. And like you said, like in boot camp, yeah, you are all afraid because most people don't know what to expect when they walk into boot camp because it's one of those things that you've never done before, right? Is that fear of the unknown, and then you got this big drill sergeant or drill instructor or whoever who's just down your throat. They're in your face, and they're gonna
very
whoop your ass. Yeah, confident, sure. Yeah, that's one word for it, right?
Yeah.
And so you have that experience, and everyone is in the same boat when you step off that bus or whatever, you walk into basic training, you don't have a clue what you're walking into. Even if you've known somebody else who experienced it before and shared with you what their experience was like, it's their experience and your experience are going to be totally different. no
Yeah.
matter what, and everybody, no matter who you ask, they had it harder.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah. Yeah, I honestly yeah, I remember once we made the roof sweat, I think. That that was the only thing that was the only day I ever think I was like, "Alright, this isn't fun."
Yeah,
The rest of the time, it's a lot more sitting around than people realize, I think, you know?
yeah. I mean, there is a lot. There's a lot of, especially earlier on. There's a lot of that classroom type stuff because you need to
Yeah,
crawl before you can walk, and they're not going to
yeah,
hand you a
yeah, a
gun
lot of
and tell
basic
you to go
stuff.
shoot it before they tell you which way to
Mm,
point it. You know.
mhm, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That a lot. I bet you we could probably come up with a lot of crazy stories from all of that. But um, so let's fast forward a little bit. So you were a corpsman in the Navy, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So what was that experience like? Being you mentioned, there's other fields that you could be, exploring that need a high degree of education, like doctors and things
yeah,
like that. But the military basically provides you the
yeah,
education experience that you need. What was that experience like?
and the permission.
Yeah.
That is crucial, which is a component crucial to that equation. Because I remember like, that is really funny. I remember when I first showed up to my first hospital, my first duty station in Naval Air Station Jacksonville. I was at the base hospital, and we just a bunch of corpsmen just came back from over. They were in Middle East. They were deployed, and then they got back. And like I guess when you get back from a deployment, there's like a senior. You have like a senior mentality. Like no one can mess with you.
Yep.
Leave me alone. I just got back from deployment. And like generally people respect that, even like your commanding, like people in command and stuff. So
Sure.
we were training on how to insert IVs again. And because I guess they had hangovers, so that they needed to get a couple of normal saline bags.
Sure.
Um, and I remember a lieutenant who was a nurse on the floor. He walked into the room and he just kind of looked at us, and he looked at the guys who just got back from deployment, and he was like, he just
Yeah.
closed the door
Yeah.
and left. We were definitely wasting medical supplies, but anyway,
Well, I
it's
mean, it's good
yeah.
training, right? I mean, you
Yeah, it
got to keep
actually
that
was.
up,
Yeah.
right? You know.
Yeah, it actually is. I mean, it's definitely relevant to what we were doing. But it's funny the attitude that they had about it. Like we're gonna do this, and no one's gonna say anything. I actually for a long time I joined originally. I wanted to be a corpsman because I know this might sound silly to some, but Saving Private Ryan.
Mm.
There's a scene when they're doing the beaches of Normandy, and I don't know if it's the army. I think it was Marines that actually went. Uh, was it in the Marines that invaded Normandy, like the beaches?
Uh,
Or there was a bunch of places.
there
There's a bunch of different branches.
there's a
But
bunch of branches,
the
right?
scene
Yeah.
in the movie, I'm not sure if it's Army or Marines. But the point is that the the corpsman or the medic that was under fire, those like what are they called, the hedgehogs or whatever,
Yeah.
uh, and still doing their duty. I was inspired by that, like
Wow.
immensely. Yeah, it was very profound for me. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, that I think that right there just says a lot about your character and your willingness to sacrifice for somebody else because that scene, I know what scene you're talking about. Um, I mean, that was not uh, a scene that a lot of people would be like, "Oh, yeah, sign me up for that. Yeah, sign me up for going storm the beaches of Normandy and getting shot
Yeah.
at and have my, you know, the guy who was standing next to me on the landing ship have his legs blown off and, all this stuff." Like,
Mhm.
nobody
Yeah,
wants to
it's pretty
sign up for
gruesome,
that.
yeah.
Like, that's pretty awful. But, that's something that inspired you, which to me, that's like, okay, that talks to your character as far as a person like what you were willing to put out there, in terms of your service. So,
Well, I thought
so
it was I mean, I was inspired to that. I wanted to achieve that, I
sure,
think, because I know that's real,
yeah,
I've heard enough stories now to know that, you know, corpsmen have done that.
yeah,
Army medic, all those they've done that over and again.
yeah, and
It
and
was the
even
first
that,
job in the US military, actually, corpsman.
yeah, even that movie itself, from what I've heard in their like the opening, I don't know, the premiere, whatever they call it. I don't know. I'm not in Hollywood. I don't know. I don't know these terms or whatever, but it doesn't matter. when they first started showing the movie, they brought in a group of veterans who actually were there at
Oh,
Normandy.
man.
They were those people, and they brought them in, and there
No,
was
man.
not a dry eye in the place, and they all
That's
said
right.
that like that's what happened. They captured it
Yeah,
about as closely as a movie can capture it without physically being there recording it as it's happening. But that's what happened, and
yeah,
that just told me like, holy crap, that is about, as real as a movie can make it, and,
yeah,
it was
yeah,
intense, so,
yeah.
um,
He's
yeah,
quite thorough, Steven Spielberg, like, when
yeah,
they were doing, filming Schindler's List, they had, like, therapists and all kinds of people, like, for everybody. The whole
mhm,
crew was, like, because of, like, a lot of those people's parents, like, and grandparents, like, anyway, yeah,
yeah,
so it's the same, like, he's a very thorough director, so when seeing that Saving Private Ryan, I knew that it was a reflection of truth, like, what I was seeing was not something decorated or made or made gl it wasn't glorified,
yeah,
and it was, like and the the intent of everyone that was involved in this project saw it as a very, regrettable thing, like war and people dying and that sort of thing, and fascism
sure,
and yada, yada.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, your time so you basically started off as a corpsman, right? That was, like, your first, like, coming out of basic training, you went into, your
Yeah.
training as a corpsman, right?
Went to core school, then I went to my first duty station, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Um, so what was your time like in the Navy, and where did you go, and, how
Actually,
did you
it was fairly brief, honestly, because
yeah,
I have obviously, I have Tourette's. I developed Tourette's, and it was like I had a choice between, like, getting out and, like, being, a boatsman's mate, basically just going around and shoveling, doing duty stuff, like, being on the duty roster for my whole life,
okay.
for my whole service, and I was like, "Nah." Because I couldn't do my job anymore. I'm not deployable. You can't deploy if you Shakespeare. If you I don't even have to elaborate on that. So,
Yeah,
yeah, so, I mean, it was over a year, but, and then, but the thing is that, like, it was still rife with tragedy, like, it was pretty lame. I lost a shipmate, and I still
yeah.
think about him a lot. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
so you had mentioned that, to me in your email when we were kinda going back and forth and getting you scheduled for this episode, this interview. Um, so tell us about your shipmate and, who he was and, uh, what that loss meant to you, when he took his life.
Well, um, his name was, LS1 Tom Murphy. He loved Adele before everyone else did. Like, he showed me swear to God, he showed me Adele. He's like, "This girl's gonna be super famous," and I was like, "Bro, okay." I was like but I believed him too because she was incredibly talented. I was like, "Holy crap, yeah."
Yeah,
Um, uh, his wife was German, um, and she's a really lovely lady, and then, uh, he 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 was very, he was like what would happen if you mixed, like, a New Yorker with, um with somebody with more anxiety than they know what to do with, like, in a good way. He was very like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." He was a really funny dude. He was a really funny guy. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, uh, that
And
was
so
a
and so that loss, when he took his life, how did that impact you, and how did that, kinda
oh, man. It
affect
still
you?
does.
Yeah.
The story of it is actually, pretty awful, because the way it all began. It was like December 21st, I think, or 22nd, and everybody was still on base. Nobody had gone on Christmas leave yet. And we had this like department meeting at his request or something. We were gonna meet and he wanted to have uh, a briefing on suicide during the holidays. He said it increases during the holidays.
Mm,
He's the one that said it. So
wow.
we did it. Where he's there. He's there too. He's present.
Hmm.
And the thing is that, like, he wanted us to read this story aloud about this man who was really, suicidal, and I think he dealt with chronic suicidal ideation. He, he tried to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, and, this man ended up, becoming completely paralyzed from the neck down, consequently, and so as the person is reading this story aloud to everybody, instead of offering, like, sympathy and understanding, they were laughing at the story, and I'm the lowest ranked person in the room, so I didn't say anything,
Sure.
and I really regret that now because he was standing right there listening to everybody laugh at this dude who was so distraught that he wanted to die, you know? He wanted to end mortal suffering, and, um, he saw people making a mockery of it, and anyway, and, like, 10 days later, he killed himself.
Wow.
Uh, so I was I came back from Christmas leave, and, it was the next morning. I didn't have a car, so, to get to the base hospital, I had to do the duty truck. So I'm waiting in by the barracks to get the ride there, and it's just me every morning, that does this. I don't know why, how, because we're all living there, and, like, anyway, I was confused, but the guy pulls up, and, I get into the truck, and we're driving, and it's just he and I. We're sitting in the cab together. It's like 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and he says, "Hey, do you know an LS1 Tom Murphy?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's my LPO. It's a leading petty officer. It's my boss." And he says, "Yeah, he killed himself last night."
Oh, wow.
That's how he told me. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if anybody knew other than like other than the people at the front desk, right? Because I don't
Mhm.
know how recently it happened, and I started, like, basically having a panic attack. Like, I went into the hospital, and, um, I was asking, like, I saw some of the people that I worked with in different floors, and I was like, "I don't really know what to do. I just found this out." And they were like, it's no," they didn't know what to do either. So, um, and then I found out that was not like a cruel joke, um, and that his death, the manner in which he died, uh, somehow the SWAT team was called and all that stuff. Like, they were outside of his house, armed and ready to go in for hours,
Mhm.
but they didn't wanna go, obviously, because he's a veteran. A lot of reasons why. He was a Marine, actually, too. He served in the Marine first, and he was in Iraq and Afghanistan, I think, in the early, like, 2003 to the 2005, in those years, and everyone that I've talked to from those years is not it was not a good time,
Mhm.
for anybody. Yeah, um, they they, uh they waited outside, and then, because they had heard a gunshot, and, they found his body hours later, and, so one of the things that sort of has never left me is anytime, and this is every single time somebody does this and holds like a fake the finger gun to their head, I think of Tom, like,
Mm.
every time, it never fails.
Right.
It's, it's the one of the most reliable things in my life, you know? I know that when I see that, I think of Tom, and, um, I think that he's demonstrative of, like, a larger problem, like, with VA care, and, with, like, a lot of, a lot of people, not maybe not necessarily in command, but a lot of your even those people that you serve with are not very accommodating of mental illness, and or addressing mental illness,
Yeah.
because sometimes, like, if you have security clearances and stuff, you can compromise that
Mhm.
by disclosing that you have these problems, and so, um, I really don't know of anything more counterproductive than the notion that revealing mental illness would, like, then preclude you from doing a job that requires you to have, like, that to have a sound structure of reality, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
I don't know. I just, because these people, like, a lot of these people they're not replaceable. They're not easily replaceable, but they're very bright. They're
Mhm.
very well trained. They have the personality for the work. And so they need to have, reprieve in the same way that other humans do because, yeah, they're not more than that.
Yeah,
And that's yeah, and a lot of people think that because they dealt, with IEDs going off near them and with other, with other small arms fire like that they can deal anything, and that's just but the thing is that, emotional distress, like a divorce or losing a kid, I mean, like, there's it could be so many things that can
yeah.
really set you off.
Yeah, and there's yeah, like you said, there's so many different things. It could even be just trouble with your finances and
Yeah,
I everybody's situation's different, obviously.
yeah,
Everybody's
seriously.
reasons for mental health related issues are going to be different
Mhm,
regardless,
mhm,
Um, but yeah, a lot more I think needs to be done. And the one thing that kind of is um, interesting to me about this whole story is that this individual that you're talking about worked in the medical field,
yeah,
worked, in
yeah,
that field, had access to information who, like, if
mhm,
somebody, for example, if somebody was to come in, and he was to have seen that person was having mental health related, uh, problems, maybe he wasn't the mental health provider that would provide the services that was needed, but at least had the ability to refer this person to, "Hey, go talk to this counselor or
mhm,
this, therapist or whatever."
mhm,
You don't just pull that out of thin air. Like,
mhm,
you have information available to you. Um, and so
yeah,
I think to your point, what you're saying is that there, especially in the military culture, there are, um, just these, I don't know, stigmas or,
mhm,
these barriers for people to go and get the help. Maybe you
yeah,
think that you can handle it because you've handled the IEDs and the small arms fire and the all this
mhm,
other stuff. Maybe you think, "Oh, I'm tough. I can handle it," whatever. Well, yeah, maybe you can until you can't. And so, yeah, you
yeah,
go talk to somebody, And the other thing that you were, talking about earlier, was um, the suicide prevention, topic, that
yeah,
meeting that he had called, and where
mhm,
people were mocking the suicide
yeah,
attempt and making jokes and all that kinda stuff. Um, like, I get the fact that jokes were made in the sense that the military culture in general just has a really dark sense of humor, and I'm
mhm.
not
Oh,
saying that
yeah,
that it was right that those jokes were made, in
yeah.
that
Well,
context,
yeah, it would
but
be one like, I normally would agree with you, but, like, what they were laughing at was, like, really parti it was, like, when the person was pleading the most with the reader about, like, their situation, it
yeah,
was everything, and they're just like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
obviously, I wasn't in the room, so I don't know the
yeah, yeah,
specifics of, what happened and what was said and all that kinda stuff, and, probably, you know, uh, probably would make me sick hearing some of the stuff, right? Um, but, that is maybe a bit of a, weird coping mechanism that folks may I don't
oh,
wanna
no,
say
yeah, for
weird,
sure.
it's not weird in that it's abnormal, it's just a thing that, an outsider looking in might be like, "Gee, what the hell is wrong with
Yeah,
you?" But you're right, especially, in that context of a meeting about suicide prevention,
mhm,
you shouldn't be making fun of suicide or the outcome of a failed attempt. Um, like, that's not a thing that you need to be joking about. Like, sit there and learn something about, what had happened, and, um, that's the whole purpose of that, and,
yeah,
as professionals, you should act professionally and not act like a high school student or middle school student who's just
yeah,
making jokes of it over things that you don't understand, so that,
yeah,
um, that's unfortunate that
Yeah,
that
they're of
happened.
course, they're not demonstrative of that, of the military as a whole, like, of course, most people are like me and probably you about that, like,
Yeah,
they take it rather seriously. It's a solemn thing when someone says, like, and I've served, like, I've talked to so many people that had served too, and they're of the same opinion, right? So it's not like, I mean, yeah, uh, yeah, definitely, the coping mechanism thing is certainly certainly a component of it for sure.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and especially when you're dealing with folks who have served overseas and they've seen
Yeah,
dark things, and that tends
yep,
to be the thing that you gravitate towards is that dark humor, and, um,
mhm.
we used I know I've made dark jokes too, and I've
Oh, I have
laughed at
too.
dark jokes, and I'm not saying that those that it's wrong
I
or
just feel
anything
bad.
like.
I know that they must be feeling like I can't imagine being one of the people that was laughing because, like, I think about, like,
Yeah.
how I mean, I don't know how you couldn't possibly connect the 2. Like, you can't you know what I'm saying? Like, you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
deny the existence of, like, their interconnectedness because it's like, um, even if you could, I don't think you could do it wholly. Like, you couldn't do it completely because it's yeah. I'm yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
unless someone just completely blacked that out of their memory, that whole meeting,
Mm,
that whole experience is just blacked it out of their memory, yeah,
no.
I would
It was a
imagine
traum
there's
it was
some connection.
Mhm. It's a
Yeah,
traumatic time for everybody, I think.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
so after after all this, you get out of the military, um, tell us about what that time period was like for you getting out and what you ended up,
oh, man.
getting into.
So, I learned that I was a writer, uh, when I was in the Navy, and, I actually that was enabled quite a bit by, like, different people, professionally and personally, like, they encouraged me, to do the work, and, I even was, like, there was a point where they were trying to someone in, public relations was on the base was trying to get me to work in their office and, like, had tried to have an interview with the commanding officer and all this stuff, like the CEO of the hospital.
Mhm.
And anyway, so um, I learned after I started writing, I learned that I was pretty good at it, and I was doing well. Uh, I tried to go to school for it. I tried to go to school just in general to be like an EMT, which I ended up doing, and I did 911 dispatching, and then journalism. Uh, uh, And I've won awards. I won awards in journalism and photography, for,
Nice.
feature writing. And I taught myself. I taught myself while I was in the Navy, actually. And then, yeah, it was hard because returning to civilian life, um, it's interesting because when you don't have, like, war stories, it's like they're disappointed. And I think that's
Right.
so, that's so I don't even know. The grim is not really the word. It's perverted, I think, in a strange way,
Yeah, that's a good
you
word
know?
for it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't it's really strange to want people to, like, describe because it's like whenever I any paramedic or EMT will tell you the same thing, like, "What was the worst call you ever got?" And it's like, "Oh, yeah, like, let me just tell you about, the thing I found in a microwave." Okay? Like, there's nobody wants to talk about that,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And, and it and so, like, I feel like, people there is always going to be this divide between civilians and because there's just no way to reconcile that lack of experience. They're not going to understand that it's not funny. Like, there's some things like, I know you're talking about what we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
but there's some things that were, like, within your personal history that you can't joke about. Like, you just can't because it's just it's just tragic. That's it. That's all it
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah,
there's no
and
lesson to
and
be learned, it's just
and it's not
loss.
a movie. It's not meant to be
Yeah,
entertaining, it's like
mhm,
you watch Saving Private Ryan, right? And that was meant to be entertaining. There's a whole story that went along with it. The characters were developed
mhm.
and all these things, right? But, what is the worst thing that you saw, or did you shoot somebody, or did you have to do this or that? Like, those things are terrible things that you shouldn't have to relive. just for somebody else's entertainment, right? Like
Yeah.
a movie has its place, right? Those things exist
Yeah.
for the entertainment value. The the memories and the experiences and the thoughts and all this stuff that you and I and other people have experienced, we shouldn't have to relive those just for the entertainment of the folks who are asking us about, right?
Yeah, it's really yeah, I just I it's easy it's so easy to lose someone's respect that way. Like the minute you ask
Mhm.
somebody who's done something anything remotely serious like that in their lives, it just you just look like a very unserious person and
Yeah.
like someone that lives without consequence.
Yeah.
Like who lives a life without consequence and doesn't see service to others as a thing. Because like serving others, I mean, I think you generally like it escalates in your life. You realize you enjoy helping and caring for others, and you sort of like you see how far you're willing to go to do that.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And
sure.
so, yeah, I think, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. So you got into writing, you won some awards and, obviously, fairly accomplished as far as, your writing goes. Um, you mentioned earlier, the, uh, issue with having Tourette's that you said was that developed while you were in the Navy, is that correct?
yeah. That's the weird thing. So, like, it actually manifested outside of what the DSM-5 lists as criteria for the condition because it lists that you have to be 18 or younger
Interesting.
it has to manifest before that
Okay.
for it to be Tourette's. I certainly have Tourette's, and it didn't start
Sh
till I was 19.
Sure.
Um, which I think that rules like that are just like when they describe it, that's not helpful.
No.
The
No,
way that they did that, it doesn't matter. Like I didn't, it didn't preclude me from getting the diagnosis. In fact, the doctor was quite casual about it. He was cavalier even. He was like, I described my symptoms to him, and he says, well, let's give you something to treat that Tourette's. I was
yeah,
like, wait, what? Yeah, and
just
it
that
was
easy,
crazy.
just all matter of fact like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. It was really strange.
Yeah, so I guess, the the question I had about that is, do you think that the writing was was something that you used as, I don't know, maybe like a coping
Oh yeah,
mechanism to
oh yeah,
share to express yourself or get your
yeah.
thoughts across? Is that kinda how that developed?
Oh, absolutely. Oh man, Scott, yeah, 100%. Like, have you? I wrote a short story called "All Wars End Alone,"
Okay.
and you got to think about the title for a second, but it works. They end alone. They all
Yeah.
wars end alone. Yeah, and so, I oh my god, yeah, I several times, so many I've written a few stories, like short stories, to talk about, like, what I saw, like, the grief I saw in people returning from deployments, uh, and some of the strange things, like, that happen to those people mentally, um, and like, they become symptomatic. I remember I wrote this short story called "The Great Fishless River" when I was, which is about two kids going fishing. That's it, and one of them has a brother who just got back from the Middle East,
Mhm.
and he has like these weird bouts of rage that he never had before, and like they can't figure out why he gets so angry all the time and why, like, like what a light bulb exploded upstairs and it freaked him out so
Yeah.
bad that it's like a whole thing. Um and so he doesn't understand, neither of them understand why that's happening, and that's it, that's all they're talking about. I
Yeah.
wrote about I wrote a short story about the funeral that I went to, that afterwards that was um for Tom, uh and several others. I mean, honestly, there's like few, like probably the one that was most was just about a guy who comes upon someone that he became friends with. He finds them drunk and dead in the snow,
Mm.
and he was like home on leave for Christmas, and it was a whole thing. But that's member also to the way that I was trying to describe what was going on in terms of my grief, and then the grief that I was trying to come to understand that uh, I didn't because I didn't go overseas. Uh, but I still tried to understand uh, and describe in terms that are tasteful and true.
Sure, sure. Um, you know, you've mentioned a couple times, the folks who haven't gone overseas and
Mhm,
their, um, you know, how they might perceive their service or how other people maybe
mhm,
perceive their service. And, uh, I did go overseas, but when I hear people who say things like, "Yeah, I served, but I didn't go overseas. I didn't deploy." Right? Um, to
mhm.
me, that that is like, it's like unnecessarily diminishing.
Self-deprecating.
Yeah, yeah. It's like
Mhm,
diminishing your service and the value that you provided to this country because, um,
mhm.
like everybody signed up. Everybody, in the last
Yeah, that's the
however
risk.
many years, we all volunteered, and
Yeah,
we all did whatever it was that the country asked us to do. And maybe there was some need that needed to be filled here at home, taking care of, like you
on the
said,
green
taking
side,
care of
yeah.
those folks who are coming back from overseas. They can only spend so long over there, and they come back, they need to get help. They're going to have medical and mental health and physical health and other things that need to be taken care of. And that's where folks like you came in. And if there was nobody here, could you imagine those people just like walking around aimlessly, like, where do I get help? You know?
Yeah, it's a I think it's a necessary bridge between civilian life and military. Like, if you consider that, like, if you consider, like, my personality accommodates, um, people that have gone and served overseas because whatever they come back with, I'm gonna be sympathetic or empathetic of that situation because I been around it enough and
Yeah.
around other people enough, like, that have gone through it that, I'm familiar with how it manifests, and the most important thing is being forgiving,
Mhm.
because, these people don't wanna hurt other people, like, if they people that are serving for that are, experiencing, um, PTSD and so on, it's just, it's really unfair. Um, Truly, people that don't have any of these experiences and don't have to war with that, being member to your history,
Mhm.
they don't understand what it feels like for your, like, nervous system to be on fire basically all the time,
Right.
and you don't even realize that you're on fire, like, you know that everyone perceives you differently, because of what you've been through but you can't devise a way that can impart the what's relevant and helpful to them for them to understand. You can't.
Yeah. I even noticed that in myself just, when I came back from overseas is,
Yeah.
I just noticed that I was just a different person.
Yeah.
I was not as happy as I once was. I was not as, um, uh,
Mhm.
easygoing or whatever. I was very quick to get
Mhm.
angry, and why? I couldn't put my finger on the why. Like, I knew there was a difference there, but I couldn't put the finger on the why. And if someone was to ask me, like, "What's going on? What's going on with you?" I don't know. I wouldn't be able to put that into words.
It's
Um,
grief.
yeah,
It's grief. You're grieving, like, it's people what it is you're grieving, like, the fact that you've been disillusioned. Like, once you realize that people actually die through violence, like, on a scale that's organized, by religion or politics, you realize, like, how f te like, how quickly that could completely derail all of society. Like, it just takes a little bit for you to realize chaos can come at any second, like anywhere. I mean,
yeah,
what's that? There's a guy that says nine missed meals. There's like three or is it three meals between like civilized society and total chaos, like anarchy. Like there's is three missed meals, and it's yeah. I mean, imagine America everyone in America missing a few meals, like, it would be I mean, we've seen, we've seen, smaller versions of that, you know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and
during storms and stuff.
yeah, during that type of thing, and you saw what happened, just a few years ago, the beginning of COVID when you couldn't find toilet paper on the shelves, because everyone
Mhm.
was hoarding that stuff thinking that that was gonna fix something, I don't know. That you
They're gonna
couldn't.
sell it. They're trying to
Yeah, or
sell it
something,
too.
like, like, what do you it's toilet paper, man, like, it's I don't know, like, I don't think anyone has ever, like, spent any meaningful time out in a field, you know, trying to figure out how to
Or maybe too much time out in the field.
or
So they're
maybe
like,
too much time,
"Need the toilet
maybe
paper."
that is true, they wanted that creature comfort of having the toilet paper around, you know?
Either way, it's symptomatic of something.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's
Eh
grief. Yeah, I think that people are grieving, like, I think that people that's what they're sad about. They realize that they're never gonna get that back, and you can never correct it. You can never yeah, you're blemished.
yeah, and there's something, you just said that, there's something that you'll never get back. You'll never get back that, uh, I guess maybe innocence is
It's
the right word,
yeah,
where
purity,
or
trust.
ignorance,
You
or,
trust other people.
yeah, yeah. Um, Trust is good. Um, you'll never get that back because seeing what you've seen, doing what you've done, um, it it just takes all of that away. Um,
Yeah.
and now how do you deal with that? How do you get back to a quote unquote normal life? How do you not let the the little things turn into huge things? The you know the balloon popping turn into a full blown
Yeah,
rage incident, or where you go
yeah.
and hide in the closet or something, or I don't know. How do you let those things just become normal things like they are to almost anybody else? Like
Well, I think
that's
that
a difficult
Shak
thing.
that's a funny thing because like, I Shakespeare, because, like, we try to measure, trauma by the events that induced it, you know, but the thing is that I think there's a point of diminishing returns where the trauma is just going to be like full scale no matter what you like so uh being like for example like if you were a kid and you're beaten viciously every day, I would contend that situation for a kid would feel a lot worse than being stationed in a base anywhere. It doesn't like it's because like honestly but the thing is that just in the base though, yeah, you guys, just in the base.
Yeah, sure,
Just, like,
sure.
sitting around in the base is one thing, but, the thing is that it's just, but we can't quantify it that way
Hmm.
because we have to measure its effect on the person
Yep,
rather than, um, its ability to affect people, uh,
sure.
and so forgiveness, I think, is the number one thing 'cause I think a lot of, uh, veterans are going to, like, hurt the people they love and offend them, and when they have moments of lucidity, when it returns, you have to be able to put the blame like necessarily where it is, and that's in the you are being symptomatic of a real condition. Whenever that's what I was saying. It's quite cruel with people that haven't gone through anything like that because they don't realize how much anxiety determines your perception of the world.
Hmm.
And like PTSD can like completely warp the way that you think about people and events and how strongly you react to things. And it doesn't it's completely unproductive.
Yeah,
And yeah, and so I see it as I see that as part of you. I think that needs to be part of our understanding, so like we can actually uh, not destroy our self worth with blame. We need to do because we're trying to heal, trying to do better.
yeah, yeah. Now, for the folks who are, maybe the loved ones, family members, or coworkers, or just friends, neighbors, whatever. Um,
Mhm.
with regards to what we are just talking about with folks who are dealing with mental health issues or dealing
Mhm.
with anything like that, uh, especially with regards to suicide prevention.
Yeah.
We were talking about that before. Um, what are some ways, in your opinion, that you've seen that are beneficial? What are things that people can do to help uh, folks in those situations where maybe they're not quite in their right mind? And how do we kind of pull them back and help them, get back to you know uh, a happier place
Hmm.
to.
Yeah, well, I think it's the most important thing, because I think that a lot of veterans, especially the ones that go overseas and stuff, you like, if you do, patrols and stuff like that, you have to look like you're watching people all the time.
Mhm.
Like, you really pay attention to the way people are looking at you and all this stuff, like, I mean, I would imagine that eventually, like, you get maybe used to it, but, the you start to develop, an understanding of what truth looks like, how it rests in the face,
Yeah.
how it sits in the face. And so whenever you come to confront like these problems, you need to do it from a place of earnestness, because the people that are looking at you and who have gone through that have studied enough untruth and deception and through necessary paranoia to get to where they are. So like you can't. So don't try to fool them. Don't try to lie to them. And because that's I mean you're just going to destroy
Yeah.
all your credibility, and and your ability to intervene later on. Um, uh, it's I think it's really about never giving up on, if they use their moments of awareness, like of and where they are themselves, to say, like, I'm sorry you were on the receiving end of that situation, and I really want to do better, and this is how I'm doing better to manage, because I've heard a lot that your mental health is not your fault, but it is your responsibility,
Yeah. That's a
which
good
is an
way to
awful
put
way
it.
to describe the relationship you should have with it. However, like when the word responsibility, I mean only to describe, like, it's how you manage it, not in how it manifests, and then like it's so like
Yep.
because you're being symptomatic, if you truly are trying to become a better person and recover and be a productive member of society and all of those things, you really cannot hold things against yourself. Like you really have, self-blame is just really not going to help. And I'm the worst about that for myself and Shakespeare. And like the whole Tourette's, the way it manifests and I injure myself, is that's part of it. A large part of it is that I feel like I deserve it. Like I
Mhm.
deserve to be punished, and that's because the way I grew up, the way I was beaten growing up. And so, like it's like literally like pathological or whatever. Like I can't, now I have a condition that literally makes me hurt myself because of I my brain eventually says, this is what you deserve, and this is how you make it right with the
Wow.
world. And if anybody should say, you should not, please do not do that to yourself. Don't become like me.
Yeah.
It's freaking awful. Like it's better just to respect that you're a human who is sick.
Yeah, and I think your point about the responsibility, it's not, uh, you know, it's not the thing that happened to you is not your responsibility that it
Mhm.
happened to you, but how you
Yeah.
react to it, is the responsibility of you, and not
Yeah.
meaning, like you said, not meaning your, you know, your emotions or anything like that, but like going and getting the help. That's your responsibility,
Yeah, your
you know?
symptoms are not your fault either.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
right.
It's how you manage it in the end. Like, that's your responsibility. How you manage it is the most important part. If you have symptoms of it,
Yeah.
then you need to, like, it's about, like, writing that stuff down. It's about, like, it sucks because you're the one that has to do it, but ultimately it's going to benefit you. It's like it only it benefits you. I mean, that's what the aim is anyway.
Yeah, and well, so yeah, it benefits you, but for the folks who are listening, I know a lot of people out there are the um, the tough guy kind of mentality is like, "Oh, I can deal with this. It's whatever. It's fine if the way it is and everything like that." But So when you say something like it benefits you, that might just bounce off of somebody, I think, in some cases where they're just like, yeah, but it's fine. I don't need that. Where maybe another way to think of it, and not to say that, not
Mhm.
criticizing anything
No, yeah.
that you said
No, yeah.
at all, because I agree with what you're saying.
No, I know,
Um,
I know the personality you're talking about, though. I know what you get. Yeah.
um, the other way to look at it is it also benefits your family, your loved
Oh,
ones,
of course it
the
does.
folks in
Yeah.
your life,
Yeah.
right? Because you're gonna
Yeah.
be a better father, a better husband, a better,
Mhm.
I'm picking on the guys here because the guys are a lot of times stubborn with this stuff, but,
Yeah.
but, same thing with for the ladies as well, you'll be a better wife and a better mother and, or
Yeah,
a better
anybody
son or
serving,
daughter,
honestly, yeah,
whoever, you know?
whoever. I don't care, as long as you're yeah,
Yeah,
uh, I saw you're 100% right. Yeah,
yeah,
it's so much about because it's so much about making your, in my book, I write at one point, in the end, you realize that, all joy is, derived from your relationship with others, like, from the warmth of your friends.
okay.
All joy is derived from the warmth of friendship, and you, you keep that, you're keeper to that, and you encourage that, and you invite that, by addressing the mental health issues, because it's like it damages. It might be little offenses, but little offenses can eventually add up.
That's right. Yeah, every one of those little things, it's like the concept of, death by a thousand cuts, it's like
Mhm,
small little cuts, one little
mhm,
cut may not be a big deal, slap a Band-Aid on that thing, you'll be fine,
mhm.
but, yeah, 1,000 of them, that's a whole different story,
Yeah,
and uh that's where those small offenses like you're talking about, those small
yeah,
things, they can start to really erode, relationships and trust
mhm,
and everything else. It's just, uh, if there's something out there worth fighting for, a marriage or,
yeah,
some other relationship or something, like, man, do what you need to do to get yourself right so that you can show up and be the best fill in the blank,
yeah.
whatever that
Of course,
relationship is.
the corollary to that statement, like, with, being the people that are with the ones that have the PTSD, you guys need to be resilient too. Like,
Yeah.
in the same amount of effort and resistance to, despair that the people that are sick have to do, like, to get through the day, you should be putting towards in warmth and love towards the people that are
Yeah.
dealing with it. It's like it's because otherwise, and like there's there's something that I always like try to talk about. There's like a few things. There's three techniques that when I describe like getting rid of anxiety. Like part of meditation is an important part of it, and the way that I describe its efficacy is that it's like using a garden hose to empty a pool. It's going to take a long time,
Sure.
but it's actually generally effective. Like, the thing is, it's just about paying attention to your body and, like, trying to figure out, like, where you're tensing up a lot.
Mhm.
Like, 'cause if you work out a lot, you can kinda, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just about noticing, like, where you're doing that because, the other thing is tapping, which
Yeah.
is this is another technique that, you've probably talked about on here, but,
Yeah.
you tap with your finger, somewhat aggressively, bundles of nerves around in your body, and that excites some part of your brain that processes pain or something, and basically whatever you're thinking about that gives you so much anxiety, doing the tapping tells your brain, "Oh, that thing doesn't hurt that much."
Yeah.
Okay, that's the
Yeah.
other thing, and then there's one last thing that I just had in my head a second ago.
All that,
Sorry, it was
yeah.
stimulation. People that have PTSD are generally more sensitive to stimulation, and I
Okay.
learned recently that whatever accepts the only reason I had whatever part of your brain that, dopamine receptors, uh, whenever you are stimulated too much, it's like you're constantly being exposed to dopamine, and it lowers your it raises the threshold of which you like how much you need in order to like experience joy and stuff. So you know how those Mormons are not, they do seven on the set on Sundays they do a family home evening,
Yeah.
and they spend all day not listening to nothing and not doing nothing. And that, you know what? That's why they're happy. That's why they're a little bit happier than everybody else, because they got that one day where most of them are just not doing anything, and so they truly do like they truly are maybe a tiny bit happier, because
Yeah.
they maybe are truly, and that's part of it. And I think that a lot of religious folks know what I'm talking about. Having that day of where you refrain and reflect uh, is actually somewhat medicinal, truly. You know,
Sure. Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I mean, there is so much stimulation in this world. I mean, everything
hmm
from your phone to what's on television to you go on the internet and you can go down a rabbit hole on any
yeah.
topic and you
Yeah,
could
it's like
stay
alcohol.
there
Yeah, it's
forever,
like
you know?
alcohol. Like any other substance, when you drink too much, you have to drink more and more and more to feel the same thing.
Sure.
If your brain is stimulated so much that like it's got the dopamine going all the time, then it's like it's nothing. It's
Yeah.
nothing. It's a river that turns to glue. You know?
Yeah. That's a good way to think of it. It needs a lot more effort to get that river flowing. Uh,
Yeah. So
yeah.
refrain as much as you can, like from stimulation and stuff, because that's also going to be very helpful for people with PTSD and stuff like that. Is reducing the amount of stimulation.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like you said, these things take time.
Yeah.
You can reduce stimulation one day. You do it tomorrow and say, "Hey, I'm going to set this as my day where I'm going to reduce the amount of stimulation that I'm getting, and hopefully the next day I'll be magically cured." Well, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's something that takes time. This is something that's
Yeah.
over.
Emptying a pool with a garden hose, really. You
Yeah,
gotta just sit there, just hold
yeah.
it.
You can't expect to walk into a gym, throw a bunch of weights around and walk out looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like it's
Yeah, it's not
not
gonna
gonna
happen.
happen, so like that stuff takes time and
It
you have to be
does.
okay with
It
that. And I
does.
think you have to commit to it. I
Yeah.
think that's the point, right?
I tell you, I wrote a book, and, like, my book is 2.5 times longer than The Hobbit. It's a long book.
Wow, yeah.
It's a long book, and I tell people, they say, "How did you do that?" And it's, like, so funny because the answer is really, truly one word at a time. It's like
Yeah.
it really did, it's one word at a time, and I'm quite careful. So, yeah, it truly is, like, yeah. It's and also, like, envisioning a goal, I think, is an important part of that. Like, doing, modest goals that are achievable and also somewhat inspiring.
Mhm.
You'd be surprised, like, what ends up making you, like, feel proud of yourself for doing, like, once you've been in so much despair for so long, like, making your bed becomes something worth
Yeah.
celebrating, and celebrate it. So
Yeah, celebrate it, and you're right, even the little things,
mhm.
as small as making your bed or, one thing that just you accomplish every day, um,
Yeah.
and you can look back and just be proud of that, and you're right, it is a weird thing. I've experienced that myself with just other ordinary, just mundane day-to-day tasks. It's just a thing that I've done daily, and I look back and it's like, "Oh, I did this every day for however long." That's a pretty cool accomplishment,
Yeah.
that I've at least had the, uh, uh, fortitude to stick with it,
Yeah.
and not give up on it,
Mhm.
um, so you mentioned your
Mhm.
book, could you tell us a little bit about the book and what that's all about?
It's actually, uh, this is it. This is an early version of it. I had to fiddle with, the because the font and all that stuff.
Sure.
But this is called The Second Son. And really, I wanted to talk about, there's a lot of military stuff, and it's an epic fantasy, and empire, there's slavery, there's everything but racism and sexism, because I thought that was just too much baggage, like, for but I really wanted to focus on the human, like just the human component of our lives, really. I wanted to like write out like some allegory about uh, income inequality, about like well, generational income inequality. Because the like right now, a lot of millennials and younger are struggling to buy homes. Not just
Mhm.
struggling, like it's I mean, for some it's impossible. They will never save up enough money.
That's
Like
right.
the amount that your house appreciates in value is now like it doesn't matter how much money the millennial saves during the year because it's appreciated more than what they're capable of compensating for.
Sure.
And so there's actually there's pirates, there's all kinds of characters from all over the world. There's different kinds of love. There's different kinds of it's just so there's actually so much. I try to be comprehensive in that sense. If you've read John Steinbeck's East of Eden,
Okay.
um, he's an extraordinary writer, one of the best American writers ever. And he said his whole mission as a writer is to help people understand one another, and I share in that.
Okay.
And I mean to write literature. Uh, so I want it to achieve a certain level of understanding, like uh, and and describe the best in the best terms our I don't know our nature and our habits.
Yeah. Okay.
And I feel like I did some of that.
Excellent.
I've gotten some really flattering reviews from people all over the world. I've sold like 13 without a marketing budget. Anybody. I didn't have anybody. I have myself. I
Yeah.
sold 1,300 books,
Okay.
uh, and over 50 countries on all 6 continents except for Antarctica, of course,
Sure.
being the seventh. Yeah, and so I've just I love my work more than anything, and I mean it to actually be a reflection of who we are. Like,
Sure.
um,
When things go sideways, will you be prepared? Some people are concerned they might have to go for a long time without electricity or even food. That's why I want to introduce you to 4patriots.com. Get preparedness products you can use now and that could save your life later. My favorite is 4Patriots' new solar generator, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It uses the endless free power of the sun to power lights, your TV, medical equipment, even run your fridge. Plus, it's expandable and comes with a free solar panel. Or pick up one of 4Patriots' best-selling survival food kits. Delicious tasting and designed to last for 25 years. They even have kits with real meat, and if the power's out, no worries. Just boil water over a fire, simmer, and serve. You'll enjoy a hot meal and stay safe in a crisis. More smart people than ever are finding 4Patriots. Over 2 million customers trust them, and you might have even seen them on TV. I had the folks at 4Patriots set up a special page for you at 4patriots.com/drive on so that listeners of this podcast can see this week's discounts and deals before they go away. Go to 4patriots.com/drive on, but hurry, these deals won't last long. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to 4patriots.com/drive on. Well, that's awesome. So I'll have information about that in the show notes as well if anyone is interested in checking that out. But I appreciate you sharing that with us. Um, Before we wrap up the show, I know a lot of times these episodes can be kind of heavy, kind of sometimes a little dark and everything. And I always like to end with a little bit of humor, just to help folks laugh and
okay,
find some uh, joy in life. And so I have a segment that I like to do this segment when I have another veteran on the show because it always gets a good laugh. It's called "Is It Service Connected?" And it basically is watching a video of a service member doing something stupid, and then we try to predict whether or not whatever happened in the video would qualify for some sort of disability, service connected disability down the line. It's kind of a America's Funniest Home Videos Military Edition type thing. So
that's amazing.
it's just a fun short segment. Short twenty
Shakespeare.
30 second segment, not a big deal. And so we'll take a look at it. For the audio listeners, of this podcast who can't view the video. I'll try to describe it as best as I can. Your best bet, go to YouTube or Twitter, X, whatever they call it now, and uh, check out the video. Check out the video there. But I'll do my best to try to explain what's going on. So I'll share my screen with you right now, so you can see what I am seeing, and we'll get this video up.
Oh
Right now,
no.
it looks like an obstacle course. One of those things. I forget what they call it, where
Hmm.
you're trying to work together as a team building exercises.
Oh
And
geez.
they're trying to cross some water, and I looks like a couple 55-gallon drums tied together with a rope with a piece
I don't
of.
like the title of this video. Obstacle gut check.
Yeah, I tried to name them so I remember what the videos are all about, but that's what we
That's all you
that's what
need,
we're
huh?
that's what we're
That's all
taking a
you
look
need.
at,
You're like,
and
"Oh, no."
let's see what happens. So we got a soldier who tries to run across this obstacle, and he gets slammed into this bar that he was trying to jump over, right in his gut. So that was a gut check, I think, that we were talking about there.
Mhm.
And you can see, I don't know, there must be probably 20 soldiers there who are standing around. Everyone is cracking up um, at the failed attempt to cross this obstacle. But it looked like there was a high five at the end. Uh, so
Yeah.
I think for that soldier who was getting across there, everything turned out okay. I don't think he was too seriously injured. Maybe a cracked rib if he hit that thing hard enough. But other than
Yeah.
that, I think he'll be okay.
Oh
So,
god. Yeah.
oh,
Mm.
anyways, well, thank you again, Christoph, for taking the time to join us, sharing everything that you have experienced in your time in the Navy as a corpsman, and the experiences that you had, losing that shipmate, and how that affected you, and in ways that we can, maybe work to help prevent that, or at least be more sympathetic towards the folks who are dealing with some sort of mental health conditions that just need a good sympathetic ear
Yeah.
to just kind of listen to them.
Mhm.
So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.